while I was waiting for my session to start, I was very relaxed. The previous session pretty much covered most part of the context, I was going to talk about. And thankfully, by the leaders from the companies who are leading and paving the way for the industry in this space. So it's a tall order for me to make this interesting for you. It's not an easy topic. This is lots to do by the technology led by the likes of Google. I think Seema covered very, very well that how the interconnected behavior of data operations to ML operations and eventually to AI. And furthermore, the panel discussion around applied AI, because AI is no good unless it's applied. What's making it happen is the data pipelines, the surge of data coming in, and how we are using this in context, bringing the domain and data expertise together to make certain things happen for ourselves, which is essentially touching our lives on a day-to-day basis. Let me just take what's happening around us. What's happening around us is, if I go 5 years back in our lives, it was an economy and it's an experience where we were pulling the information out. We were extracting the information through the search engines, the platforms which were there in existence. And if I look today, how it changed itself. From a pull-based, it has become a push-based. What I mean by push-based is, the LinkedIn pushes to me, Facebook pushes to me, Netflix pushes to me, Airbnb pushes to me, and so does my insurance claim pushes to me that you have not filed it, please file it. If I don't pay my electricity bill, they push to me, guys, you're gonna get some penalty, please pay it, That's how this is coming in context. But now comes the part which is underneath the hood, that how you're gonna build the data, operationalize it at scale, so that what all this experience we talk about, the technology and the platforms which Google and many others are creating, is putting us into this kind of an experience. And that's the dirty secret. That's where the whole conversation has to rely. So with that, let me share with you, what's the value of data? Let's talk about how the hybrid machine versus human collaboration is happening. We are just knowing ourselves that collaboration only happens between humans when we sit in a conference room. But there's another part to it. That's where the AI plays a significant role. How the operationalization of data, what are the few things to keep in mind while doing that? Because otherwise we'll just be building platforms at scale without putting them into action. What's the kind of culture? And today we talk a lot about enterprise data culture. What does it really mean? What to do about it? Lastly, we know the industrial revolution happened. That's where the gigafactories were built. Now we are building the data factories. What really, how they manifest, themselves. What really we do in those. And eventually, I will share a little bit about, how the future is going to look like, how the new concepts of the experimentation which is going to happen on this data, and maybe when Star Trek's imagined few things 40 years back, we never thought those will be real, but today they are real. With that, the value of data. I just talked about it. We learned a lot about technology. Let's put a little bit lighter side to it. The value of data is how quickly I can get to the data. If you want to know that how long it's going to take me, my Uber driver, to come to my door, and how quickly I can get to know that I'm going to reach to the destination, that's the speed you expect today. You cannot leave that at imagination. You cannot leave at any kind of guesswork. You want your data to give you a very definitive answer on that, and at speed. But for the companies who are in the business of creating these kind of solutions for you, these kind of platforms for you, they also need to assess what's the cost of doing this, right? If I have to create a 30 rupee application, I cannot be spending 60 rupees to build it and deliver it. I need to see that, how can I manage that? And eventually, the most important one, accuracy of that. Can I rely on that? If what is being presented to me, can I believe on that? You look for a certain promotion on internet, and you go to the shop, and the guy tells you that, hey, this is no more existing. It's not valid. You feel cheated. You say that, hey, I looked it up, and I found it on your website, and hence you're saying that this is not working. So accuracy becomes a very integral part of the experience and the consumption of data. And if I summarize these three pieces together, that is what I call the value of data. If the one of the two or the three is compromised, it's not as great as it looks. All day, night, we talk about data, experiences, AI, machine learning, but it has to be at speed. It has to have a cost element which is not prohibitive, and it has to be an accurate piece of information. I think enough is spoken about it. You all know very, very well. The only small element I'll add to this, when the machine and human predictions will start to collaborate a lot more, some of the roles will change. What I mean by roles will change is that today, in any given context, 5 to 10% of the decisions are taken by machine, and remaining 80-90% are taken by the humans. If they're not taking the decisions, at least they're using the judgment to validate that decision. It's not just being thrown. Otherwise, doctors will be out of existence. Robotics will take over, do the entire operations, and be done with it. But somebody's going to validate that. The operation which is happening through robotics is good for the human or not. But over the time, let's fast forward 5 years, we will see that rather than 5-10% of the decisions, 25-30% of the decisions will be done by the machine. And human decision making will be only for critical things like operations and so on and so forth. If I have to predict what's going to be my sales number for the quarter, I can actually rely on the machine to predict that for me. Because even if I'm 1 or 2% off, I can have a recourse. I can report my numbers again. So the paradigm is shifting. Collaboration is happening not only amongst humans, it's happening between humans and the machine. The machine is taking over. Human is left to the judgment on very critical things. That's the point I'm trying to make. And what's making that happen, we all know, is the surge of data, the veracity of data, and availability of that data. Now, how should we drive this kind of behavior and this kind of, value? Very basic, 3 things. Don't want to complicate through what platforms we use. While we are doing any of this, we need to think about very basic things. Am I creating an efficient ecosystem of my data factory or my data ecosystem? Does this ecosystem have endurance from the variety standpoint, from the velocity standpoint, from the new kind of data streams which might come, which I don't know? Will my data platforms be able to adjust to address those or not? Eventually, the elasticity, which cloud provides at scale today. When you build data pipelines, you have fair bit of elasticity taken care. But your context is very critical to build endurance to that. Let me take a very simple example on that. None of us have still seen a convertible which is EV, right? The electric vehicle convertible. Efficiency, huge efficiency through the electric vehicles. Endurance is all climate conditions. The vehicles should work. And we all know in the last 4 or 5 years, the softwares around electric vehicles which predict that how much miles it's going to go, the battery life of it, right, changes from conditions to conditions. If you're in a very cold temperatures, the efficiency of the battery is lower than the normal conditions. If you're going uphill versus downhill, the efficiency changes. And if you see what's happening while these predictions are being made, is the amount of data which these EV vehicles are storing, the softwares which are running, the models which are running, and eventually are giving you that final outcome on this. And that is increasing at a pace. The number of Teslas which, move around today, the number of new vehicles being introduced. But one thing which is still not done, which I was making the earlier point, is combining these three things together to build a convertible EV still has a time to go. We do not know whether it will have the right kind of, endurance for a certain kind of a condition, and hence it's not there. Whether that will be autonomous or not. Whether if I'm stuck with a battery life and, the roof will not get closed, I'm stuck, and the rain is happening. So point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of context in which the data operationalization has to happen. It just cannot be happening without that. What shall we do? Direct to consumer, huge change happened in the last 2-3 years. Most of us have been ordering food, deliveries at home. I have heard, I live in Bay Area. I know India is far superior than that. In that there are apps which can give you in 5-7 minutes some delivery at home, and there are more which talk about, the last half a mile or kilometer you can get it sourced from. And what is happening to that? They're using the traffic data, the store information, the vehicle information, and and your address information to make that happen. We all love that experience, but we never talk about what's making that happen and the amount of data which is being used underneath. Fast forward, metaverse. The world of digital is gonna get fully blended into our physical world. Where we have the physical catalogs, we're gonna have the metaverse catalogs, the true digital catalogs. We're gonna have experiences which we are calling phygital, which is a combination of digital and physical. We're gonna start leveraging that. It's not virtuality, it's gonna be real. We already are in that world. And eventually, one thing we all have known is the third part. Most of the world is moving towards usage-based consumption. How much of power you are using, how much of the bank you will use, how much of the food you are using. Everything is being measured today. And based on that, a true consumption-based economy is on the rise. And what is going to make the consumption-based economy come true is the amount of data points you capture. The more data points you capture, the better you're able to predict that how I'm going to leverage the consumption in a certain month, in a day, in an hour, or in a minute, right? That's how the consumption-based economy is. In a technology terms, we can talk about the telemetry, which is behind it. Once you're putting all that telemetry together, some of these things will be truly happening with us, by us, and we will be the ones writing much of that. Let's come to a little bit of that. I think the previous session did a lot more to this. Very simplistically put, data operationalization. Data ops leads to ML ops, to AI ops. I think enough is being well understood. This is a very basic slide. If I have to condense this to 2-3 messages for you, the basic message is that, am I creating my data sets and my entire factory where I can very easily search and discover my data? If I'm a business user writing or a data scientist writing my ML models, is it easy for me to search that? Is there a data catalog equivalent where I put some 2 plus 2 and some NLP kind of a text, and I'm still able to find the data set I'm looking for? If not, we have a problem on hands. All that what we have created, collected in our lakes and cloud ecosystem is not much to use. We have seen statistics where data scientists spend 60% of their time finding data and 40% time building models. We truly have to reverse that. We need 20% of the time to just search data and 80% to do true data science. Second part, once we have a catalog like this, is the lineage. For me to know that, where is this data coming from? Is it internal to my company? This is external, which is coming. Is it a source which I can trust or not? Is it even the right source or not at a first place, right? I can get the data, population data from 5 different places today. The government can provide me somebody else doing the census data, XYZ. But I need to know where it is coming from and how much transformation it has gone through while it is coming through. That's a lineage. And eventually, we all know the benefits of quality. While I know the source of information, I want to make sure that I'm able to trust that source of information. I also want to know that what transformation went in between and no hiccups happened while the transformation of data was happening. We simply call these ETLs and ELTs and whatnot, but we want to see that in a picture, that what all happened. Once these 3 fundamentals are established, we can tell our data scientists and our machine learning and our pre-built algorithms to run on those data sets. And they start to produce the outcomes and the results through those models, which we can put for consumption. And to do all that, nowadays we are talking AI ops. The AI ops is to ensure that all this is working in a very meaningful way without errors. Very simplistic. We are just saying that all the pipelines are behaving the way they should be. If there are errors, are we able to autocorrect, remotely correct those errors, and make sure that still my pipelines are working the way they should be? And if I put all those 3 things in context, what I will get is a superlative experience in the end. And all the last 40, 45 minutes, what I heard is eventually to be condensed in and experienced. What eventually a consumer is going to look, whether it's what your photographs, whether it was your voice, whether it's about your translation, all the APIs, all the AI we talked, is by creating personalized human experience. That's the crux of it. I'm going to share some of that at a very basic. I'm going to skim through some examples. I talked about it. Netflix, they looked at the granularity of the data, and they have humongous data points to capture. If I am traveling to India from US, they already have tracked me down. They know that while I am in India, what content I am able to see in this geography versus US, what could be my interest based on where I am, and then they will feed me that. And they will feed me at a speed where they cannot wait. When I'm on the Netflix, the same minute the algorithms will change and give me what in my true context I should be seeking. It cannot wait for a few minutes for the context to change. The third is relevance and coverage. If it is irrelevant to me, I'm not going to watch. I'm going to go to Hotstar, and while I'm in India, I'm going to enjoy something different than that. And they don't want to lose that. They want me to be sticking, that they have the most relevant, and they are covering a variety of things for me. That's what the companies like that, which we call the companies of today, but the companies of future are going to be even different. This is an insurance company, health insurance company. We talked briefly in the previous session. Earlier the health insurance was looked from the view of what your health risks are. Are you diabetic, hypertension, high blood pressure, and so on and so forth? These were the data points collected. This company changed the paradigm a little bit. They said, we're going to look at your wellness data, how well you are, how much you're running, what kind of food you're eating. And based on that, I'm going to give you certain points. I'm going to collect those data points, and I'm going to give you the premium and the insurance and the coverage and the plans based on that. So while the data collection is important, the paradigms are shifting. The industry is taking new approaches, right? And to do that, they need to have a certain amount of accuracy in that. Because for the last 50, 70, 80 years, the underwriting has happened on the other parameters. If they're changing the paradigm, they better be accurate. Otherwise, they're going to be out of business soon. The similar example, an old school company still doing the traditional way, but doing it much better. How can they have more characterization of data? What I mean by that is, if I'm an Asian in US, social determinants of health, my ethnicity, the area I'm looking in, my parents' history, and so on and so forth, can very well predict what's the chances of me to get a heart attack, what's the chances of me to get diabetes, right? And they are pushing those kind of programs to me. They're pushing me to hospitals which talks about the care for the Asian patients versus some of the US, right? A data point I will share with you. I was reading about it. The walls in the heart are different from Indian, Chinese, the Americans and the Vietnamese. If you see that, we see many of us are Asians. The Vietnamese people smoke all day, drink as much as beer they can, and their average expectancy is more than 80 years. So it does not matter as much in that ethnicity to do certain things, being a smoker and a drinker and having whatever kind of life, still they're going to have a higher expectancy because the walls of the heart are not as narrow as some of the Southeast Asians like us. So these data points, many of us don't consider while looking at our plans and our premiums. But an insurance company is looking at that, and these are making and factoring in. And where it's coming from? The pipelines they have built. The company, which is probably one of the pioneer in the data operations, the pipelines they have created, in India we feel the most is Uber. We all use it, but we never think about the amount of points they're capturing underneath, which is the traffic information, the vehicle information, our personal profile, the day of the month, the month itself, the hour, and so. We all know there's something called surge pricing, but we don't know why this is a surge pricing. They have collected the shitload of data, they put that into their model, and within seconds they can predict that I should be charging a person more or less based on the availability of the vehicles, the geo-positioning system, giving them how many vehicles are in a certain zip code or a PIN code. And what they have done, they have created the best intelligence ecosystem through the data operationalization at scale globally. If you see them, if I'm coming from the airport, right, it's within seconds and minutes they are able to track me, where I am, what could be my. So what I said is they're tracking the location intelligence, mobile intelligence, how I'm moving, which path I am taking, and then they optimize their entire set for me as a personalized experience. Coming back quickly, the factory of the future, the data is going to be very similar to the shop floor. A product is being casted, molded, sent for shaping, painting, finishing, and eventually, I took 25, 26 years back, I was a Godrej refrigeration, where the refrigerators are being built like a shop floor. And you can see there is touchless, machines, which are moving and conveyors are moving. Just rather parallel after 26 years to the data factory now. It's exactly going to be the same. The data is going to move, come, being massaged, put it into a structure, it's going to go into a store, it's going to get consumed, and it's going to get delivered as an outcome, which we're going to consume. So what was the conversation in an industry like manufacturing, is actually getting replicated in our own worlds, more like a data factory. That's what I mean by that. And then we're building products on top of that, whether it's a healthcare product, insurance product. 2 days back, I believe the India-Australia match was happening. If all of us would have noticed, there is a prediction going which is changing every ball based on whether the player who is on the crease have scored a 4 or a 6 or a single or a no run. The prediction of that game is changing. So they have so many data points, which are being captured. I got the alarm, but seeing that how AI ops is going to help, on one side it's going to track the events, the metrics. Second is to avoid the errors and maintaining the quality, the dependencies, which is running on. It's going to capture both and synthesize a more harmonious information for the data factory. Wrapping up quickly, what's in the future? What we eat, we want to know how healthy it is, where it is coming from. It's coming from which farm in Karnataka before it went to any farm and came to me. What we drink, beans to coffee, want to know where the coffee is coming from. Is it organic, not, where it was produced, who are the farmers, the whole effect around it. We talked about the insurance models, the healthcare models, the product lifecycle. Eventually, the point is our lives are changing with the more data points we have. And the data operationalization becomes one of the pivotal factors for ML ops to exist and be accurate and eventually deliver a more personalized experience to us. That's the crux of building these data products. So I think there was a small video which I can skip, but very excited about the change, the shift which is happening in the industry. I'm sure all of us experience it every day, but there's a lot which goes beneath that, and that's where we apply a lot more context. And I'll summarize by saying is, we all should be in the business of building context-driven data factories, not just the data factories, because those will not deliver the experiences we all crave for. So thank you very much, guys.